Chapter 5. Returned to Windfold. That possibility became reality faster than he expected. One evening, an urgent message from Celestine arrived, trembling with alarm. Mr. Damon, a group of unknown men forcibly entered the manor's ground floor last night. I was absent, but my wards indicate they gained partial access to the corridors. They have not reached the crypt yet, but the locks are weakening under their tampering. I fear they plan a second intrusion, possibly with bigger forces. The gem remains bonded to you, so they cannot fully awaken illusions without you, but they might still do damage. I beg you to come if you can, for Windfold's centuries-old guardianship stands on the brink. We must stand together. Celestine Windfold. Matt Damon felt a surge of adrenaline reading it. The dreaded confrontation was at hand. The caretaker had done her best to maintain illusions and wards, but the estate was physically vulnerable. If the specters of Highland found a way to corrupt the crypt or the illusions, the gem's power might be twisted beyond measure. He could not remain in L.A. while the caretaker battled alone. Yet the idea of returning to that deserted estate, possibly facing armed intruders, rattled him. Still, he made the decision swiftly. Summoning Bridget and the intelligence consultant, he explained the situation, leaving out magical details but stating that a dangerous faction threatened an old location in Scotland. He intended to travel discreetly, but he required strategic support if violence erupted. The consultant recommended a small team of specialized security personnel trained in low-visibility operations. Matt hesitated, mindful that illusions required mental and moral clarity, not paramilitary aggression. But given the armed men in L.A., he realized a purely naive approach might be lethal. He accepted the consultant's plan. 2 discreet security experts would accompany him, remaining out of sight unless absolutely necessary. Within days, Matt Damon was on a plane to Glasgow again, the swirl crest medallion heavier than ever against his chest. The gem's warmth pressed upon him, as if anticipating a final confrontation. Once more, he had arranged minimal fanfare, traveling under an alias with only the consultant and the 2 experts, Sarah and Jean, who had backgrounds in protective detail. They asked few questions about the gem's mystical nature, only that a dangerous cult aimed to seize an artifact. They accepted their role. Landing in Glasgow, they rented a discreet vehicle, heading north. The drive replayed his earlier journey, but the mood was drastically different. Tension threaded the group's conversation. Jean checked equipment, though nothing too conspicuous. Non-lethal defensive gear, advanced communication devices. Sarah navigated, verifying route data. Matt was quiet, heart pounding as the moorland stretched before them. Another drizzle fell, and the day's light was fading, reminiscent of his previous arrival at Windfold. In the late afternoon, they reached the Whitehaven coast. This time, no caretaker or driver was waiting. The path near the cliff looked even more overgrown, as though storms had battered it. They parked behind a rocky outcropping, out of sight. Sarah scouted ahead. Distant glimpses of Windfold Manor's silhouette told Matt the structure still stood in its forlorn grandeur, but no sign of immediate conflict. The swirling wind carried a sense of foreboding. As dusk settled, the team hiked along the cliff's edge. Matt clutched the wooden box containing the gem, though realistically, the gem was within him. The box was symbolic, holding the crystal that first led him here. He noticed the security experts scanning the horizon with binoculars. They spotted no watchers near the gate. A hush, almost too quiet, surrounded the property. They entered through the same iron gate, the swirl crest glinting in the last rays of light. The manor's facade loomed, windows dark. Celestine must be inside, Matt whispered, motioning the others to spread out. Sarah circled left, Jean right, both carrying handheld comms. Matt advanced toward the front porch, the gem throbbing again, sensing tension or the presence of foes. He tried the door locked. Quietly, he stepped around to a side entrance, recalling how Celestine had led him previously. This door was slightly ajar, an unsettling sign. He slipped in, hearing footsteps in a distant corridor. Shadows flickered from a feeble lantern. The house's once silent gloom bristled with an edgy energy. Crouching behind a fallen beam, he carefully moved forward. Sarah joined him, signifying Jean was covering the perimeter. The corridor leading to the caretaker's sitting room was scuffed, footprints marking the dusty floor. They reached the threshold, peering in. The caretaker's old furniture remained, but the room was in disarray, papers scattered, a broken lamp on the floor. One figure, wearing dark clothes, rummaged through drawers, cursing softly under his breath. Another stood by the window, scanning the yard. No sign of Celestine. Matt felt dread coil. He and Sarah exchanged silent signals. She pointed to her tranquilizer pistol, ensuring no lethal shots unless absolutely necessary. He nodded. The gem flared, urging caution. Could illusions help again? Possibly, but conjuring illusions from multiple armed men might be draining. He decided to wait until they found Celestine or face no alternative. They withdrew, creeping back into the corridor. Another noise echoed from deeper in the house. They followed it, hearts pounding. Eventually, they reached the library, the broken shelves. Inside, 3 intruders wearing dark coats hovered around a door leading to the crypt staircase, the same locked metal gate Matt recalled from his first visit. They fiddled with heavy tools, apparently trying to break or unlock it. Celestine's wards might have slowed them, but their persistent efforts would eventually succeed. Matt scanned the scene. Celestine was nowhere visible. Could she be in the crypt, holding it from below? Or had she fled? The intruders muttered about accelerating the break, and the caretaker will not stand chance. The mention of caretaker stoked Matt's concern. Sarah tapped her earpiece, quietly summoning Jean. A plan formed in Matt's mind. They could ambush these intruders with illusions, letting Sarah and Jean neutralize them. But illusions drained Matt's emotional energy. Could he do it scale? He inhaled, summoning the gem's resonance. Recalling the terror it inflicted on the men in L.A., fear might scatter them, giving the security team an opening. Before he acted, footsteps approached behind. He spun, spotting 2 more men stepping into the library from another corridor. They froze upon seeing Matt. One shouted, "He is here! The gem-bearer! Get him!" The library erupted in chaos. The 3 at the crypt gate spun around, brandishing weapons. Sarah acted first, launching a flashbang from behind a shelf. Light and sound burst, disorienting the intruders. Jean rushed in from behind, tackling one to the floor. Shots rang out, plaster exploded. Matt took cover behind a toppled bookcase, heart hammering. Now or never. He pressed the medallion, focusing on illusions. He pictured swirling mists, phantoms that stoked each man's insecurities or nightmares. Tremors of energy coursed from the gem, filling the library. The air crackled, illusions forming. Sarah and Jean, aware of the plan, shielded their eyes, trusting they would not be the illusion's target. The intruders yelled in confusion. One jerked back, seeing phantoms swirl around him. Another fired wildly, hitting a lamp. Darkness flickered. The illusions thickened, showing them ghostly figures, twisted shapes echoing their darkest regrets or fears. Some shouted curses, dropping weapons to claw at illusions or run. In seconds, the library devolved into screams and chaos. Seizing the moment, Jean and Sarah subdued multiple foes with skillful takedowns. Non-lethal shots pinned them to the floor, tranquilizer darts knocking them unconscious. The illusions magnified their panic, ensuring minimal resistance. Within minutes, 5 men lay incapacitated, hearts pounding, guns clattering uselessly. The illusions lingered until Matt relaxed his focus. As he did, exhaustion hammered him. He nearly collapsed, the gem's resonance draining him emotionally. Sarah steadied him. "That was incredible," she breathed. "Never seen anything like it. You're all right." He forced a nod, drenched in sweat. "Yes, illusions used too long. Need to rest." The gem's hum receded, replaced by a dull ache behind his eyes. Jean checked the corridor, verifying no additional attackers. Then they regrouped, tying up the unconscious men. "We counted about 7 total," Jean reported. "We got 6. Could be one more unaccounted for. That reminded Matt of the hawk-eyed leader or Celestine's mention of an unknown ringleader. He said, "We need Celestine. She might be in the crypt or somewhere else." Quick! They turned to the crypt gate. The heavy padlock and wards displayed scorch marks from a blowtorch or tool. Though battered, it remained locked. As Matt approached, the medallion glowed faintly. He inserted a small key Celestine had given him last time. Miraculously, it still fit, or perhaps the gem overcame the wards. The gate unlocked with a resonant click. They descended the same spiral stairs into gloom. Lanterns in the crypt corridor flickered, revealing signs of disturbance. A side chamber door lay splintered. Faint moans emanated from within. They rushed in to find Celestine slumped against a stone bench, clutching her side. Blood stained her cloak. Matt hurried to her, calling Sarah to check vital signs. The caretaker's eyes fluttered open, relief softening her grimace. They forced me to reveal a partial route. I tried to stop them from entering the crypt itself, but overcame. She coughed. "You arrived in time." Matt pressed a hand gently to her shoulder, feeling a surge of empathy and guilt. "We subdued them upstairs. The crypt remains locked. You are injured. We will get you medical help." She shook her head weakly. "I will mend. More importantly, the crypt remains safe. The illusions you conjured must have thwarted them. The ringleader might have fled. My wards indicate he was not among those subdued. You must be cautious." Sarah applied basic first aid, stabilizing Celestine enough to be moved carefully. Meanwhile, Matt realized the gravity. The gem's illusions had saved them, but the ringleader, likely the hawk-eyed man from before, escaped. He might attempt another strike or vanish to scheme anew. For now, Windfall Manor was secured. The caretakers survived. Yet the threat was not fully resolved. They guided Celestine upstairs, stepping over unconscious intruders. Outside, the drizzle had turned into a steady rain. Jean signaled local authorities, though the caretaker insisted that minimal official involvement was best. Some quiet arrangement was made with contacts who recognized Windfold's historical guardianship. By dawn, the men were discreetly taken into custody by specialized officers who apparently cooperated with Celestine's lineage. Matt marveled at how a centuries-old caretaker network quietly managed threats that normal law enforcement might not comprehend. Exhausted, he collapsed in a dusty armchair while Celestine was treated. He gazed at the swirling gem in his wooden box, the swirl crest continuing to glow softly. The illusions had proven essential, but had drained him severely. He realized that, in moments of dire need, the gem could push illusions outward to protect the innocent. However, it was an intense experience that tested his spirit. Once Celestine stabilized, she beckoned him closer. "You have done well, Mr. Damon. The gem remains safe. Windfold's lineage owes you a debt. Yet do not forget that the ringleader is still at large, and the caretaker's vow never ends." Matt nodded, rubbing tired eyes. "Yes, I sense we have not seen the last of him, but at least the immediate threat is thwarted." She managed a wan smile. "Indeed. Now rest. Windfold welcomes you as a friend. Perhaps you and your security may remain a day or two, ensuring no second wave. Then you can return to your normal life, albeit forever changed." He exhaled. Changed is an understatement. The illusions, the synergy, it is like stepping into a living myth. Celestine placed a hand over his. "We dwell in a world layered with secrets. The gem's resonance is but one thread in a cosmic tapestry. You have glimpsed enough to realize how potent moral clarity can be, for good or ill. Keep it safe in your heart, even beyond these estate walls." Thus began a short period of respite at Windfall Manor. The caretaker's associate, an elderly local named Rowan, assisted in repairs to the battered library and corridors. Sarah and Jean patrolled the grounds, verifying no further intrusion. Matt Damon spent quiet hours reading dusty archives that recounted the gem's storied history, how many had come and gone, forging illusions for noble or nefarious ends, how the Windfold family pledged guardianship for centuries. He read of times the gem had nearly fallen into unscrupulous hands, only to be saved by a rightful bearer's illusions. Though physically drained, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The illusions were not mere parlor tricks. They reflected spiritual power that forced moral reflection upon both user and target. In misguided hands, illusions could manipulate entire communities, sow fear or chaos. In righteous hands, illusions might protect or reveal truths. The gem demanded unwavering authenticity from its bearer. He reflected on how that burden might shape the rest of his life. After 2 days, Celestine regained mobility, bruised but determined. She assured Matt that local watchers would keep vigilance. The battered intruders were in custody, though the hawk-eyed man remained missing. As Matt prepared to depart, she clasped his hands, reciting an old windfold oath in Gaelic, bestowing upon him the estate's continued blessing. He felt a subtle warmth from the swirl crest, as if Windfold recognized his guardianship as enduring, no matter the ocean that separated him from these ancient halls. Bidding farewell, he promised to remain an ally. He left the caretaker's domain with Sarah and Jean, traveling back to Glasgow. The gem's luminous swirl was calmer now, as if content that immediate danger had passed. Yet Matt suspected the final resolution might lie in the future, if or when the hawk-eyed ringleader emerged again. For the moment, though, he cherished the caretaker's trust. He had proven himself not just a Hollywood star, but an earnest guardian of an ancient relic. On the flight home, he reflected on how illusions had become integral to his life. They were not illusions of the screen or special effects, but illusions born of moral resonance, bridging the intangible realms of empathy and fear. He vowed to continue using them sparingly, only in dire need. The caretaker's vow echoed in his mind. The gem could unify hearts or fracture them, depending on who wielded it. In his care, it must serve unity. As he neared L.A., once more, he pondered how to incorporate these experiences into a life that demanded public attention. Perhaps, as Celestine said, the caretaker's vow never ends. In quiet corners of philanthropy or creative storytelling, he might weave illusions that awaken hearts, not through supernatural displays, but through compassionate narratives, bridging the gap between stardom and sincerity. The caretaker's illusions had tested him, but real illusions of modern society, ceaseless superficialities, manipulative hype, needed addressing too. Maybe that was the gem's ultimate calling, to transform illusions into truth. Chapter 6. Quiet Stewardship. Returning to Los Angeles, Matt Damon embraced an unusual calm. Despite the intensity of Windfold Manor's battle, he felt more grounded, as though enduring that crisis had cemented his role as the gem's guardian. Celestine's parting words lingered. Use illusions only in line with your moral compass. Indeed, the illusions were dangerous. He had no intention of flaunting them, nor parading them like a superpower. They were a last resort, a shield against threats to the gem or the innocent. Over the next few months, he readjusted to everyday engagements. He resumed philanthropic collaborations, developed a new film script about the power of collective empathy, and continued to refine relationships with colleagues. In small ways, the gem's resonance enhanced his interactions, letting him sense emotional undercurrents with heightened clarity. He became adept at defusing tensions in production meetings or bridging ideological divides in philanthropic boards. Some described him as having a radar for unspoken conflict. He quietly smiled, attributing it to deeper listening. All the while, the hawk-eyed ringleader remained at large. The intelligence consultant discovered only vague leads. An unknown figure possibly linked to an occultish group called the Spectres of Highland, rumored to have clandestine cells across Europe and parts of the Americas. They might be lying low, having suffered a defeat at Windfold Manor, or regrouping for another strike. Matt refused to live in fear, though he maintained discreet security. He also corresponded with Celestine regularly. She had fully recovered, dedicating her days to strengthening wards around the crypt. No further intrusions occurred, but faint sightings suggested watchers still hovered near Whitehaven. She urged him to remain cautious, adding that a day might come when Windfold Manor faced an even greater onslaught. Then, they would rely on the gem's illusions once more. At times, the caretaker's vow weighed heavily on him. He had never intended to become embroiled in mystical lineage wars. He was an actor, a father, a humanitarian. Yet fate, or the caretaker's note, had led him down this path. He found solace in the knowledge that the gem's illusions served not to destroy, but to reveal and protect. So long as he upheld that principle, he felt guided. One late afternoon, resting in his study, he gazed at the swirl crest medallion. In the gentle sunlight, it caught golden reflections, the swirling pattern seemingly in motion. He closed his eyes, recalling Windfold Manor's crypt, the illusions that confronted him, the possibility that illusions might also uplift hearts if used with compassion. Perhaps the caretaker's vow encompassed more than staving off threats. It might also involve quietly cultivating illusions that spark empathy, bridging gaps in a modern world. He tested a modest scenario. A friend of his, a film producer, had grown cynical after multiple commercial failures. The producer doubted the value of socially minded films. Over dinner, Matt gently guided conversation, letting the gem's resonance highlight the man's underlying frustrations. Then, in a subtle mental push akin to illusions, he conjured fleeting suggestions of the producer's own proudest youthful dream, creating art that inspired social change. The illusions were not full-blown visions, just faint impressions that softened the producer's cynicism. By the meal's end, the man brightened, expressing renewed interest in a socially charged script. It was a slight nudge, not manipulation. Matt told himself the illusions were no different than shining a mirror on someone's hidden hope. He resolved to keep such uses minimal, never overshadowing free will. The intangible line between constructive illusions and manipulative, mind-bending weighed on him. He realized how easily one could rationalize illusions for personal gain. A pang of anxiety reminded him that the caretaker had warned of moral corruption. He vowed never to push illusions where they were not wanted, or to coerce people into acts they would not otherwise freely consider. Around this time, he pursued a new cinematic project aimed at highlighting global refugee stories. The gem's empathy sharpened his conversations with actual refugees, letting him glean deeper emotional details. He fought tears hearing their accounts, resolute that the film would not be mere spectacle, but a heartfelt tribute. The gem flickered with approval, as if this was precisely the path it was meant to illuminate. Whenever illusions threatened to surface, he reined them in, preferring genuine conversation. He recognized illusions must remain an extraordinary measure, not a daily tool for his convenience. As months turned into nearly a year, the hawk-eyed ringleader gave no sign of reemergence, fueling speculation he had abandoned the mission or faced internal downfall. Windfold Manor returned to a semblance of peace, according to Celestine's updates. The caretaker's watchers believed that fragments of the specters of Hail Wind had scattered, uncertain how to proceed without their main infiltration success. Matt's life eased into a calmer pattern, though he kept discreet security. The swirling gem motif no longer felt like an imminent threat magnet, more a silent guardian hovering at the edge of daily existence. He poured his energies into the refugee film, traveling to remote locations for filming. The project demanded emotional fortitude, capturing harrowing stories. The gem's resonance steadied him, letting him hold space for heartbreak and resilience. Back in L.A., editorial sessions turned the raw footage into a narrative that balanced sorrow with hope. Early buzz suggested the film might become a critical success. Matt cared less about accolades than about the hearts it could stir. That sense of synergy with the gem's empathic push gave him unwavering motivation. During a press conference for the film, a journalist asked him about his personal shifts in recent years. "You seem more attuned to global causes, Matt," she observed. "What changed for you?" He hesitated, feeling the medallion beneath his shirt, remembering illusions, Windfold crypt, caretaker's lineage. He smiled softly and replied, I suppose I realize there is a deeper layer to our world, a bigger story we are all part of. Once you see that, you cannot ignore it. The gem glowed, as though affirming his statement. Indeed, a bigger story. For him, that story included clandestine illusions, centuries-old guardians, moral resonance. Yet he said no more. The swirl crest remained a private anchor, unseen behind the scenes. As the film's release approached, the gem's subtle guidance smoothed alliances, bridging creative differences. The final product resonated with an authenticity that moved preview audiences to tears. Matt felt a quiet satisfaction, though overshadowed by an unspoken feeling that a final reckoning with the hawk-eyed ringleader or the specters of Highland still loomed. A caretaker's vow could not truly rest until all threats abated. Then, a cryptic message arrived from Celestine by courier. Rifts appear in the wards once more. Strange omens near the crypt. Tread carefully. The final confrontation may be near. If you sense a summons, come swiftly. We stand at the threshold of concluding this saga. Matt read it with a heavy heart. He realized the caretaker's vow demanded closure. The illusions might have subdued petty incursions, but the main threat, the hawk-eyed man, remained. He closed his eyes, acknowledging that Winfold Manor's story had become his story. The caretaker's line, the swirl crest, the illusions, these were no passing fling. The caretaker had once told him, "You are free to return to your life, but forever changed." Indeed, he was changed, and if fate demanded it, he would return to Whitehaven Coast. The final test of illusions might be yet to come. Chapter 7. A foreboding signal. Weeks passed after Celestine's warning message, but no immediate summons arrived from Winfold Manor. Matt Damon, anxious, continued his philanthropic engagements, the new film's promotional circuit, and daily life. The gem's resonance steadily guided him toward authenticity in each endeavor. He found joy in subtle transformations, an entire production team banding together in charitable acts, or philanthropic partners forging alliances they had previously deemed impossible. Some quietly credited Matt's empathetic leadership. He smiled, attributing success not to personal heroics, but to the gem's intangible synergy. However, a sense of waiting overshadowed him, like a thundercloud on a distant horizon. The caretaker's words about a final confrontation pressed at his thoughts. He slept restlessly, sometimes dreaming of swirling illusions, the crypt's spiral stairs, or silhouettes of the hawk-eyed man. The tension simmered beneath daily tasks. Then, one evening, as he reviewed charity proposals in his home study, the medallion flared with sudden heat, more intense than ever. He gasped, dropping the pen in his hand, pressing his palm over the swirl crest. The gem pulsed, a frantic alarm. A wave of dizziness overcame him. The illusions threatened to swirl behind his closed eyelids. Something was happening, far away, possibly at Winfold Manor. He steadied himself, racing to find his phone. Just as he dialed Celestine's private contact, it rang. Her voice crackled, urgent. "Mr. Damon, please. Winfold is under assault. Their illusions are interfering with my wards. I cannot hold them alone. The ringleader leads them in person this time. We need your synergy. The gem must come home once more." Her voice trembled, overshadowed by background crashes. He instantly agreed. "I will depart immediately." "Hang on, caretaker. I am coming." She whispered a final Godspeed before the line cut. The gem's frantic pulsing hammered against his chest. So it had come, an all-out push from the specters of Highland. Possibly dozens of men, illusions twisted to break wards. The caretaker pinned in a dire conflict. Summoning the intelligence consultant, Sarah, and Jean, he explained the crisis. They scrambled with flight arrangements, mobilizing a minimal but well-prepared team. He refused to watch Winfold Manor fall under the specter's infiltration. This time, illusions alone might not suffice. He needed real defense. Yet illusions might tip the scales if used strategically. The caretaker's vow weighed heavily, fueling his resolve. Within hours, they were en route to Glasgow under tense conditions. The flight felt excruciatingly long, the gem's urgency throbbing in his mind. He recalled the caretaker's last words from the phone. "We need your synergy." That implied illusions must be harnessed at a grander scale, possibly on Windfold's entire estate, to repel this final assault. The notion daunted him. He had only invoked illusions in short bursts. Could he maintain them across an entire siege? Landing in the pre-dawn hours, they rushed to the Whitehaven coast once more. The ride was silent, each operative steeled for battle. Matt clutched the wooden box, though it was symbolic by now. The real seat of illusions lay in his bond with the gem. The swirl crest's glow emanated faintly through his shirt, sensing Windfold's turmoil. This time, the main gate to the estate was shattered, twisted metal lying across the path. The manor loomed under a stormy sky, lightning flickering in the distance. Muzzle flashes illuminated the windows, sporadic gunfire echoing across the grounds. The caretaker's watchers, or local allies, must be engaging the specters. Smoke curled from one wing of the house. Fear clutched Matt's heart, but he pressed on, not letting terror overshadow the vow to protect Windfold. They parked behind an overgrown hedge, disembarking quietly. Sarah, Jean, and the intelligence consultant each took vantage positions. Shots rung out from the manor's front. Shouts and the crash of glass suggested pitched conflict. Matt swallowed. He motioned the team to approach stealthily from the side. They found small pockets of caretakers' allies pinned behind crumbled walls, exchanging fire with black-clad Spectre operatives. The watchers recognized Matt, relief crossing their faces. One pointed to the crypt wing, indicating the ringleader might have forced an entry. Another explained that Celestine was inside, struggling to maintain illusions. The wards were partially broken, letting the Spectres conjure illusions of their own, sowing chaos among defenders. A wave of dread. The caretaker's illusions had always served the vow of guardianship. Now the ringleader twisted illusions for aggression. The swirl crest burned, fueling Matt's determination. He had to reach the crypt. Gripping the gem medallion, he signaled Sarah and Jean to engage the specters with minimal lethal force if possible, while he advanced deeper to find Celestine. They nodded, springing into action. Gunfire broke out anew. More illusions flitted across the corridors, ephemeral shapes of monstrous forms that might be the specters' conjurations. Navigating the corridor's gloom, Matt encountered two specters brandishing rifles. They conjured illusions of choking vines that lashed toward him. The gem flared. He countered with illusions of blazing light, dissolving their vines. Stunned, they fired blindly, letting him slip past. Tremors of exhaustion dogged him, illusions draining his reserves. Yet Windfold's fate required he press on. He reached the library again, battered by bullet holes and scorch marks from supernatural illusions. The crypt gate lay wrenched open, wards evidently shattered. He advanced down the spiral stairs, each step echoing with frantic heartbeats. The caretaker's presence tugged at the gem's resonance. Somewhere below, she battled illusions, perhaps contending with the hawk-eyed ringleader. In the crypt corridor, swirling illusions clashed. Flickers of monstrous beasts, swirling flames, and shadowy figures manifested. At the end stood Celestine, pale and trembling, arms outstretched in a protective stance. Opposite her loomed the hawk-eyed man, robed in black with a staff crowned by some stolen Windfold relic. He hurled illusions in rapid bursts, pushing Celestine back. She was pinned, breath ragged, her own illusions barely holding ground. The swirl crest on her shawl glimmered, but her energy was fading. Matt dove behind a column, heart pounding. The ringleader had harnessed illusions more potently than any foe so far. If Celestine fell, the crypt's final seal might break. Summoning the gem's synergy, Matt conjured illusions of his own, massive, luminescent shapes swirling behind the ringleader, embodiments of the caretaker's lineage. The man turned, cursing, illusions colliding mid-air in a kaleidoscope of flickers. "Damon," the ringleader snarled, eyes blazing with hatred. "You think you can stand against me alone?" The caretaker falters, and your illusions are no match for my mastery. Surrender the gem or watch Windfold's halls crumble. Matt shook from exertion, but forced a calm stance. Windfold will not fall to your corruption. The gem thrives on empathy, not tyranny. We can outlast your twisted illusions because they are rooted in your greed, not moral clarity. The man spat a laugh. Then let us see whose illusions break first. He unleashed a torrent of horrifying illusions. Serpentine shadows swirled, clawing at the crypt's floor. The air filled with hissing and shrieks. Celestine stumbled, struggling to banish them. Her own illusions flickered weakly. Matt tapped into the gem's deeper resonance, remembering how illusions harnessed personal truths. He pictured the ringleader's path, driven by lust for power, fear of irrelevance. He willed illusions that forced the man to confront his darkest motivations. As the illusions formed, an ephemeral scene materialized behind the hawk-eyed man, a twisted reflection of his life, showing manipulative deeds, betrayals, lonely nights overshadowed by paranoia. A monstrous reflection of his own visage stared back from a swirling mirror. The crypt's air crackled with tension. The ringleader's smirk wavered. He hissed, "You dare turn illusions on me? I'm not so easily undone." He tried conjuring more horrors, but Matt's illusions persisted, forging an unstoppable mirror of the man's guilt. Slowly, the ringleader's illusions faltered, overshadowed by dread. The caretaker's illusions rallied, weaving supportive energies around Matt's creation. Their illusions merged in synergy, overwhelming the intruder's visions with unstoppable reflections of his moral emptiness. The man shrieked, staff trembling. Gunshots echoed from above, presumably Sarah and Jean fending off last pockets of the specters. The crypt rumbled with metaphysical conflict. Fissures marred the stone floor. The hawk-eyed man stepped back, illusions ripping at his psyche. He cried out, "No, stop these illusions. It cannot be." He collapsed to his knees, shaking, staff clattering away. The caretaker and Matt advanced together, illusions coalescing into a final condemnation of his malevolence. In that moment, his iron was shattered. Sobbing, he lashed out with one last wild surge, hurling illusions of raging fire. The caretaker swiftly contained them. Exhausted, the man sank to the floor, illusions dissipating into ghostly embers. Realizing he was defeated, he glared at Matt with a broken gaze. "You have won this day, but illusions do not vanish so easily. The specters will not rest." Matt knelt, breathing heavily, the gem's heat nearly overwhelming. "If the specters rise again, we will stand again." Illusions cannot overshadow genuine compassion. Celestine, equally drained, nodded, guiding the staff away from the man's reach. She muttered an incantation, binding his illusions. The crypt's swirling energies calmed, returning to the quiet hush Matt recalled from his first visit. In the hush that followed, footsteps descended the spiral stairs, Sarah and Jean, battered but triumphant, having secured the manor above. They recognized the subdued, hawk-eyed ringleader, exchanging glances of relief that the conflict ended. The caretaker released a trembling breath. He must be remanded to watchers who understand the gem's illusions. Traditional authorities might not handle this responsibly. They dragged the near-unconscious man upstairs, where watchers waited to take him into special custody, presumably akin to how they handled the earlier group. This time, the ringleader would not slip away. Windfold Manor was battered, but not broken. Celestine swayed, leaning on Matt. He offered a weary smile. "We did it. Windfold stands." She returned the smile, tears glistening. "Thank you. Your illusions saved me, the estate, and perhaps many from the specter's manipulative schemes. Now the gem's vow endures, but the immediate threat has passed." Indeed, Matt felt no sense of triumph, only relief and deep exhaustion. The illusions demanded much from his spirit, reflecting the caretaker's warnings that the gem's usage comes at a cost. He sank onto a collapsed pillar, letting the swirl crest fade back into a gentle warmth. The caretaker's watchers hustled around, cleaning up debris. Sarah and Jean checked injuries among defenders, though casualties appeared minimal. A battered hush enveloped Windfold Manor, now free of immediate peril. In the crypt, he lingered, recalling the illusions that had soared in a final confrontation. So much power and responsibility. But at last, the caretaker's vow felt stable. No lurking ringleader to threaten the gem. The caretaker's watchers had this man. The specter of the specters might remain, but their leading incursion was thwarted. The caretaker's vow might endure, but for now, Windfold could rest. Chapter 8. A parting OETH the next morning, sunbeams pierced broken windows of Windfold Manor. Repairs began in earnest, patching bullet holes, clearing rubble, relocking corridors. The watchers carted away the subdued intruders, including the hawk-eyed ringleader, to some undisclosed safe facility. The caretaker supervised, though she still wore bandages from her injuries. Despite the mansion's battered state, a quiet sense of victory prevailed. Matt Damon stood with Celestine in the manor's courtyard, where overgrown weeds shivered in the breeze. He wore the swirl crest medallion openly now, no need to hide among allies. The caretaker turned to him, eyes soft. Windfold owes you a debt that cannot be repaid. Twice you came to defend the gem. Twice you used illusions responsibly. For that, this lineage thanks you. He shook his head. I only answered the vow. The gem belongs to no single person, you said. I am its guardian, but so are you and your watchers. We stand together. She smiled. Yes, yet your role was pivotal. Many would have exploited illusions for personal gain or cowered from the threat. You kept your heart pure. The caretaker's vow remains partly in your keeping, whether you remain in Scotland or roam the world. He nodded, feeling the medallion's comforting weight. I must return to LA soon, but I will be available if Windfold ever needs me again. And I suspect the gem's illusions might have a broader purpose than just defense. Could it not also sow empathy among warring factions in the world, bridging divides? Celestine's expression brightened. Indeed, illusions can reveal shared humanity, but only if guided by moral clarity. That is a path you may explore, forging subtle transformations. Yet do so judiciously. Even beneficial illusions can overshadow free will if used carelessly. He exhaled, remembering how easily illusions could become manipulative. Understand. Subtlety is key. With that, Celestine led him back into the crypt one last time, wanting to show him a sealed chamber behind the dais. The Watchers had pried open a corner that had collapsed in the battle, revealing an older vault that once housed ancient Windfold records. Inside, they discovered a small chest containing historical scrolls, testaments of past gem-bearers. She offered him one scroll as a symbolic gift, inscribed with the words of a caretaker from the 16th century. He accepted it with reverence, feeling connected to an ancient chain of guardians. Then they stood by the dais, swirling lines on the marble faintly glowing. If you need the labyrinth's illusions on a grand scale, you could return here, Celestine explained. The estate's wards intensify synergy, but the gem's illusions can also manifest anywhere your heart stands firm. The caretaker's vow extends globally now, thanks to your stewardship. After heartfelt farewells, Matt, Sarah, Jean, and the intelligence consultant departed Windfold Manor. Celestine and her watchers waved from the battered porch. Despite the disrepair, the estate shone with renewed pride, its caretaker now assured that the crypt remained unbroken. The swirl crest over the door glinted in the morning light, a silent testament to the vow. In Glasgow, Matt parted ways with the security detail, thanking them for risking themselves in a bizarre conflict. They had many questions about illusions, but he shared only that Windfold's domain was steeped in old traditions beyond typical logic. The consultant nodded, respectful of the caretaker's secrecy. Each parted with a sense that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Soon after, he boarded a flight back to L.A., the swirl crest medallion resting beneath his shirt. On the plane, he reflected on all that had transpired. The illusions he conjured in that final confrontation had tested the limits of his spirit, unveiling how illusions, fueled by empathy, could outmatch illusions fueled by greed. The caretaker's vow had become his vow. He saw the dangers lurking if illusions were misused, how easily minds could be manipulated. Yet he also witnessed illusions as a shield of compassion. He arrived in Los Angeles exhausted but relieved. Life resumed, but the swirl crest medallion glowed with a gentle comfort. In the weeks that followed, no further attacks materialized. The caretaker wrote cheerful updates about Winfold's repairs, the Watchers standing vigilant, and the ringleader's group apparently dissolving under the caretaker's Watcher scrutiny. The gem's greatest immediate threat had been neutralized. Freed from looming crisis, Matt poured himself wholeheartedly into forging constructive illusions. Not grand illusions like in the crypt, but intangible illusions that gently nudge hearts to awaken empathy, bridging divisions in philanthropic negotiations or subtle conflict resolution. He also discovered that illusions could help individuals come to terms with personal trauma. On one occasion, a friend battling grief found solace in a brief, dreamlike illusion that let them revisit a cherished memory. Touched, Matt recognized illusions could be a form of healing. He remained careful, always seeking explicit or implicit consent, ensuring he did not cross moral boundaries. Meanwhile, the new film about global refugees released to widespread acclaim, critics praising its authentic portrayal. Matt noticed a wave of public empathy spurred by the film's heartfelt storytelling, further amplified by the gem's resonance. People responded with donations, activism, and policy dialogues. Though illusions had not shaped the film directly, the caretaker's vow pulsed in Matt's chest. These intangible forces of compassion echoed the gem's ethos. In every quiet success, in every bridging of hearts, the swirl crest guided him like a gentle star. As the months drifted by, Matt Damon realized that though the caretaker's vow was indefinite, it did not weigh him down like a yoke. Rather, it offered a sense of transcendent purpose. He had found a deeper layer to life than scripts or accolades, a realm where illusions and empathy intertwined to shape destinies. He remained an actor and humanitarian on the surface, but behind that surface was a caretaker's legacy centuries old, a moral beacon that lit his path. Yet he never boasted about illusions publicly. The swirl crest medallion remained discreet, and even those closest to him only sensed that he carried some intangible grace. In interviews, he simply championed the power of storytelling and the necessity of bridging compassion across cultures. Occasionally, pressed by a cunning journalist about the swirl crest glimpsed on him, he would deflect with a gentle smile, calling it a personal keepsake. The caretaker's vow insisted on quiet guardianship, not sensational fame. Chapter 9. The Threads of Tomorrow. Over time, Matt Damon's illusions became a subtle but potent tool for fostering positive shifts. He rarely used them in dramatic fashion. Instead, he embraced the caretaker's principle. Illusions must reflect the user's moral truth, thus forging clarity rather than manipulation. A quiet satisfaction filled him, seeing how small illusions or empathic nudges spurred dialogues, overcame prejudices, and planted seeds of unity. These intangible victories far surpassed any fleeting cinematic triumph. As his philanthropic sphere expanded, he discovered areas of the world ravaged by internal strife. On certain diplomatic visits, he sensed tension so thick it nearly erupted in violence. When all else failed, a fleeting illusion, shaped by sincerity, could defuse confrontation. He never forced illusions if other routes existed, but in dire cases, illusions revealed common ground between warring sides. Local leaders recognized his presence as catalytic, though they could not articulate the mystical layer. They only felt the shift, praising his gift for bridging conflict. Yet illusions did not solve everything. He faced heartbreak when, even with illusions, certain conflicts refused resolution. The caretaker's vow reminded him illusions merely illuminated truths. If hearts were closed, illusions alone could not force peace. He learned humility. The gem was not a cure-all, just a moral instrument requiring free will to blossom. Meanwhile, when Fold Manor stabilized, Celestine wrote periodically, describing how Watchers fortified the crypt and improved wards. The caretaker's lore expanded under her guidance, bridging old texts and new strategies. Tourists never discovered the estate, ironically sealed behind illusions. Locals whispered ghost tales, oblivious to the caretaker's deeper mission. Celestine called Windfold the silent sentinel, resting in peace unless the caretaker's vow demanded otherwise. Though his illusions proved beneficial, a flicker of longing for ordinary life sometimes stirred in Matt's heart. He still cherished acting, fatherhood, friendship. Striking balance was tricky. He found himself practicing nightly meditations to ensure illusions remained anchored in benevolence. The caretaker's vow could overshadow normal human joys if he let the illusions define him entirely. He recognized that the best caretaker was one who remained human, fully engaged with the world. In the public eye, he soared to new respect, a figure bridging stardom and grounded humanitarian activism. Magazines ran features praising his personal evolution, though they lacked the real explanation. Some rumored he had joined a spiritual retreat or discovered an esoteric philosophy. He let them speculate. The caretaker's vow was beyond tabloid gossip. By his 50th year, the swirl crest medallion had accompanied him across countless journeys. He quietly advanced solutions to global crises, produced films that awakened empathy, and championed artists who approached storytelling with authenticity. Younger actors confided in him, calling him a mentor. He listened, occasionally weaving illusions to help them see their hidden strengths or buried passions. Many credited him for their breakthroughs, though he insisted they found the clarity themselves. The illusions merely reflected it. He also encountered tragic moments where illusions could not save everyone from misfortune, natural disasters, unstoppable conflicts, or personal tragedies. In those times, he mourned, offering illusions only as gentle comforts, never forcing outcomes that tested the boundary of free will. The caretaker's vow required acceptance of life's constraints. The gem was a moral instrument, not a cosmic override. Occasionally, fleeting rumors of the specters of Highland surfaced, whispering that small cells might remain active in Europe or Asia. He prepared for another confrontation, but no direct assault occurred. Perhaps the Watchers and Caretaker's allies kept them scattered. Perhaps illusions had broken their unity. The Caretaker wrote him that small skirmishes popped up, swiftly neutralized by Watchers. She assured him no grand threat lingered. Over time, the rumor of specters diminished, an echo drifting from the shadows. A sense of gentle mastery took root in Matt's illusions. He learned to conjure them with subtlety or expansive effect, guided by compassion rather than fear. He never forgot how illusions had once nearly drained him to the point of collapse. He practiced limiting illusions to ephemeral nudges, saving large-scale illusions for dire emergencies. Celestine occasionally visited him discreetly, traveling incognito. She marveled at how seamlessly he integrated Caretaker's empathy into cinematic and philanthropic worlds. In turn, he admired her unwavering stewardship of Windfold's legacy. Their bond symbolized the bridging of old-world lineage with modern celebrity influence, forging a new caretaker synergy. Chapter 10. Everlasting Embers. Decades after retrieving the gem from Windfold Manor, Matt Damon entered the latter years of his career. He had become a venerable figure in film, beloved for championing heartfelt narratives. Many recognized him as an ambassador for global empathy, forging alliances across industries. Younger generations revered him, while peers admired his unwavering moral clarity. Yet few knew about the swirl crest medallion discreetly resting beneath his jacket or the illusions he occasionally summoned to heal rifts or protect the vulnerable. He continued traveling, reconciling local disputes in remote corners, supporting philanthropic programs, and pushing for cross-cultural understanding. In a quiet village scarred by conflict, illusion sparked a moment of shared laughter among previously hostile factions. In a bustling city hall, illusions reminded cynical politicians of their original call to serve the public. He was never manipulative, merely reflecting hidden truths. Observers labeled these as Matt Damon's uncanny ability to read the room, never guessing the caretaker's vow underpinned it. One twilight, in his home study, he perused old letters from Celestine. She had grown older, transferring day-to-day tasks to a younger caretaker while retaining a guiding presence at Winfold. The Watchers thrived, continuing to protect the crypt. The gem's synergy soared across continents, as multiple guardians carried shards or lesser artifacts, weaving illusions from moral ends. Winfold stood as the node, anchoring them all, the swirl crest shining in each caretaker's vow. Now, in his 70s, Matt felt the swirl crest medallion lighten in weight, as though acknowledging the next caretaker would eventually rise. But he remained caretaker in spirit, illusions still at his fingertips, though he used them less frequently, mindful of his own diminishing stamina. The gem's synergy thrived on moral clarity, not physical vigor, so perhaps it would remain potent as long as his heart stayed true. A final letter arrived from Celestine's successor, Rowan Winfold II, a newly appointed caretaker. He wrote with admiration, inviting Matt to attend a special Winfold gathering, an exchange of caretaker experiences. The letter concluded with, "Your illusions forged a new chapter in our lineage. We welcome you anytime." The vow endures across generations. Matt Damon smiled, tears of gratitude welling. The caretaker's vow had transcended personal heroics, forging a communal tapestry of illusions for good. He decided he might, if health allowed, make a final trip to Winfold Manor. Perhaps show younger caretakers how illusions bridged philanthropic realms in modern societies. Yes, the illusions tested him, demanded moral vigilance, but they also anchored him in the caretaker's vow to foster empathy, reveal truths, dispel manipulative illusions. On a peaceful morning, he strolled in his garden, swirl crest glinting in the sun. He reflected on his life's arc, stardom, philanthropic fervor, discovering the gem, illusions shaping his path, culminating in a tapestry of quiet compassion. He realized that at its heart, the caretaker's vow was about unity, bridging illusions that separate hearts with illusions that unify them. Winfold's secret had reframed his worldview, letting him see that behind illusions, a deeper truth beckons humanity forward. Decades of illusions, philanthropic triumphs, cinematic achievements, adversaries overcome, and friendships forged. Each memory wove into the swirl crest. The caretaker's vow never ended, but he had found contentment in that perpetual calling. He closed his eyes, sensing the gem's faint hum in his chest, grateful for every step that brought him from a random package on a rainy LA night to the corridors of Winfold Manor, the crypt illusions, and back to a life lived fully yet humbly. In interviews, when asked about his secret to staying grounded, he would smile with an enigmatic twinkle and reply, "I suppose I learned that illusions are everywhere in life, but real empathy is what grounds us. Sometimes you just have to see past illusions to the heart." He left it at that. The caretaker's vow required no further explanation. At night, he occasionally dreamt of Winfold's crypt, swirling illusions dancing around him, shapes of future caretakers guiding new souls. He saw Celestine's wise smile, the hawk-eyed man's defeat, and the swirling gem blazing with cosmic color. In these dreams, he recognized an unbroken chain of guardianship, each caretaker passing on illusions used for benevolent ends, ensuring the swirl crest's legacy thrived across centuries. When he woke, a serene peace enveloped him. The vow lived on, not solely in him, but in every person who recognized illusions for what they were and strove to create unity instead of division. Thus concludes the saga of Matt Damon and the Gem of Resonance. In the hush of twilight, caretaker and illusions stand prepared for whatever illusions or threats the future may conjure, confident in the unwavering power of moral clarity. An inheritance beyond the material indeed, an inheritance of intangible synergy that touches hearts, mends divides, and reveals the quiet wonder behind life's illusions.